Elon Musk tech titan, disruptor, or a new kind of political powerhouse? This is KH Podcast. Today, we dive into Musk's America. Power, disruption, and the future of governance. Joins us to unravel Musk's radical shift from climate champion to government agitator. How did he become a linchpin in federal politics, and at what cost? We're dissecting his playbook, bulldozing bureaucracies, wielding Twitter as a global megaphone, and flirting with techno-authoritarianism. Is Musk's quest for legacy risking democracy itself? Or could Silicon Valley's rebels push back? Don't miss this clash of control, chaos, and the future of power.
All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's been, I don't know, like all over the news lately.
Right.
And that is Elon Musk's influence on the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know him from Tesla, SpaceX, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But increasingly, he's becoming a pretty major player in the political arena.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating how his image has really transformed over the years, right? Like, he went from this champion for climate action, working closely with the Obama administration, to now, it seems aligning more with right-wing ideology and figures.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty interesting because some of the sources we're looking at suggest that this might actually be part of a larger trend.
Mm.
We're seeing more and more tech leaders, taking on these increasingly political roles and voicing opinions that, frankly, might surprise some.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, are they just reacting to the current political climate, or are they actively trying to shape it?
Right.
But let's get into the specifics of what makes Musk's approach so unique.
Right.
A lot of our sources point to this pattern of him deliberately using disruption as a strategy. And I think what's interesting here is it's not just about him bringing new ideas to the table, right? He's kind of trying to shake up existing systems.
It's like a strategic wrecking ball almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Like one source even compared it to, like targeting these pressure points, almost like identifying the weakest link in a chain to gain control.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at his track record, like with Tesla and SpaceX, we see this similar pattern. He's not afraid to bypass those traditional processes or even, challenge the established norms, whether it's in business or government.
It makes you wonder if this is just about efficiency for him, or is there like a deeper motive at play?
Yeah.
A lot of our sources seem to think that for Musk, it might not be solely about the profit. It seems like he's driven by this desire for power and influence, almost as if those are the ultimate metrics of success for him.
Yeah, it's a pretty thought-provoking idea, and I think it connects to this larger conversation that's happening about, like, the evolving role of these tech leaders in society, right? I mean, they're not just CEOs anymore, They're amassing this influence that almost rivals, like, traditional power brokers. They're shaping public opinion, setting agendas, impacting policy decisions.
Yeah, and maybe the most striking example of this is his acquisition of Twitter. I mean, it wasn't just about buying a social media platform.
Yeah.
It was about gaining control of what one source called attention as currency, which is like that ability to shape narratives and control the flow of information.
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful tool. And under Musk's leadership, we've definitely seen how Twitter can be used to really sway public perception, even amplify certain political viewpoints, which leads us to this concept that's been generating some concern. And it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's techno-authoritarianism.
Yeah, break that down for us. What is that?
So basically, it describes this scenario where tech leaders, with their control over technology and information, could potentially reshape or even dismantle existing systems in favor of something more streamlined, but perhaps less democratic.
So that sounds almost dystopian.
Yeah.
Are we really heading towards a future where these tech giants are going to be the ones holding the reins of power?
Well, I mean, it's a possibility that we need to consider, right?
Yeah.
Like, imagine a scenario where key government functions, think social services, critical infrastructure, are increasingly reliant on algorithms and automated systems. These systems might be more efficient, but they're also kind of opaque. Like, the decision-making process is hidden from public scrutiny.
Yeah.
And if these systems are controlled by a handful of tech companies, it raises concerns about accountability, right? Who's making these decisions and how can citizens actually hold them responsible?
It's a sobering thought, almost like we're trading those traditional democratic structures for a system where power is concentrated in the hands of, this tech elite.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with the potential downsides, I mean, let's be fair. Musk's disruptive approach has led to some undeniably positive outcomes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, look at Tesla's role in accelerating the shift to electric vehicles or SpaceX's advancements in space exploration.
Yeah.
There's no denying that his willingness to push those boundaries and challenge the status quo has resulted in some pretty remarkable innovations.
And let's be honest, shaking things up in government, especially when it comes to bureaucracy, might not be such a bad thing.
Right.
I think we can all agree that there's room for improvement in how some of these agencies operate.
Definitely. And, there's a growing argument that tech-driven solutions could actually streamline processes, reduce waste, and make government services, more efficient and accessible. It's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but rather about finding ways to leverage technology for the greater good.
So it seems like we're dealing with a really complex equation here. We're weighing these potential benefits against these potential risks. And with someone like Musk, whose ambitions seem to go beyond traditional boundaries, it feels like the stakes are particularly high.
Definitely. I mean, we're navigating uncharted waters here, and understanding the motivations and strategies of figures like Musk is crucial if we want to ensure that technology is serving humanity, not the other way around.
And speaking of strategies, I want to zoom in on one specific aspect of Musk's approach, and that's his use of Twitter. It seems like more than just a platform for him, it's a tool for shaping narratives and controlling the flow of information. You mentioned this idea of attention as currency earlier. Can you unpack that a bit more for us?
Yeah, so in today's digital age, attention is a valuable commodity, right? And think of it like this. Every tweet, every post, every online interaction is competing for this limited resource, our attention. And whoever can capture and hold that attention has a powerful advantage.
So Musk, with his millions of followers and his knack for generating headlines, essentially controls a significant portion of that currency.
Exactly. He can bypass traditional media outlets, control his own narrative, and directly engage with this massive audience. Twitter has become his megaphone, allowing him to shape public opinion, amplify certain voices, and even influence political discourse.
So it's almost like having his own personal broadcasting network. He's broadcasting his perspective directly to the world.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's a lot of power for one person to wield. It makes you wonder, can a platform like Twitter, controlled by a single individual, truly be a space for open and democratic discourse?
That's a big question, and it's one that we all need to be thinking about. Like, if attention is currency, then those who control that flow of attention hold immense power. And we need to be mindful of how that power is being used.
All right, so we've talked about the potential risks and benefits of Musk's approach, the concept of techno-authoritarianism, and the power of attention as currency. It's a lot to process. But before we move on, you mentioned earlier that there might be a counter-movement brewing within Silicon Valley itself.
Yeah, there are signs of it.
Could you tell us more about that? What are some of the signs that you're seeing that this counter-movement is gaining traction?
Well, we're starting to see, a growing number of tech leaders and thinkers who are speaking out about the need for, ethical considerations in technology development. They're questioning this kind of unchecked pursuit of artificial intelligence. They're raising concerns about algorithmic bias and really advocating for more responsible and equitable systems.
So it's not just about blindly embracing disruption and innovation anymore.
Yeah.
There's this recognition that we need to be more thoughtful about the potential consequences of technology.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that technology serves humanity, not the other way around. And we're also seeing a push for greater transparency and accountability within the tech industry itself. There are calls for more oversight of how algorithms are used, a demand for greater diversity in tech leadership.
That's encouraging to hear. It sounds like there's a growing awareness that we need a more balanced approach, one that embraces the potential of technology while also safeguarding against its pitfalls.
It's still early days, but these are positive signs. The seeds of resistance are being sown, and it's a reminder that the future isn't predetermined. We have a say in how technology shapes our world.
That's a powerful message. But with someone like Elon Musk, who seems determined to push boundaries and rewrite the rules, it feels like we're in for a wild ride.
Yeah.
What are some of the potential consequences, both positive and negative, that we might see as his influence continues to grow? I think that's where we should pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. It's easy to get caught up in, the potential downsides of Musk's ambition. But I think, we can't forget that his kind of relentless drive has led to some, some pretty incredible advancements.
That's true. It's hard to argue with, the impact he's had, especially with Tesla and like really pushing the boundaries of electric vehicle technology. But where do you see that ambition taking him next in terms of his government influence?
Well, I mean, from the sources that you shared, it seems like he's aiming for nothing short of like revolutionizing how the government operates. Like he's not just content with advising or partnering.
Right.
He wants to fundamentally change the game. I mean, think about it. We're already seeing hints of this with SpaceX and Starlink, getting involved in critical infrastructure projects.
So taking on even bigger challenges, potentially impacting like essential services like communication and transportation.
Exactly.
That raises the stakes significantly.
Yeah, and if we connect this back to the idea of techno-authoritarianism, it's not hard to imagine a scenario where these private companies, led by figures like Musk, end up holding significant control over, essential aspects of our lives.
Yeah, that is a bit unsettling, to say the least. But if his vision is truly about improving efficiency and solving problems, couldn't this kind of influence be a good thing?
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? On the one hand, you have the potential for, streamlined processes, faster innovation, solutions that maybe traditional government agencies would just be way too slow to implement. But on the other hand, you have that risk of concentrated power, lack of transparency, potential conflicts of interest.
So it's like we're weighing the promise of this, shiny high-tech future against this potential loss of democratic control. It's a tough call.
Yeah, and it's a choice that we might not even realize we're making until it's too late. And that's why it's so crucial to, to understand the nuances of what's happening now, to be aware of these forces that are at play and to really engage in these conversations.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, as they say. But speaking of power, let's circle back to Twitter for a moment. It seems like Musk's, control over that platform gives him this like unprecedented level of influence over public opinion.
It's undeniable. Twitter, under Musk, has really become a battleground for shaping narratives.
Yeah.
He can amplify certain voices, discredit others, and essentially control the conversation around any given topic.
And with his, knack for generating these attention-grabbing headlines, it's like he's constantly playing chess with the media and the public.
Right, precisely. He understands that in today's world, controlling the narrative is often more important than controlling the facts. And with Twitter as his tool, he's become a master manipulator of perception.
It's almost like a real-time experiment in how social media can be weaponized to influence, political discourse.
That's a strong word, weaponized.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's entirely inaccurate. I mean, we've seen how he uses Twitter to, attack his critics, promote his agenda, even sway public opinion on policy issues.
And this goes back to our earlier point about attention as currency, right?
Exactly.
Like he's figured out how to monetize attention on this massive scale.
Not even just monetize it, but weaponize it. He can rally his followers, direct their anger, and essentially create this digital army to push his agenda. It's a level of influence that, few individuals in history have ever possessed.
It's both fascinating and frightening at the same time. But knowing what we know now, what are some potential scenarios that, we should be prepared for as his influence continues to grow?
Well, on the optimistic side, if his vision for government reform really is about efficiency and progress, we could see significant advancements in areas like infrastructure, space exploration, even climate action. His ability to cut through red tape and get things done could lead to breakthroughs that, traditional government agencies might never achieve.
So a kind of benevolent dictator scenario where Musk's expertise and drive propel us into this more technologically advanced future.
Yeah, possibly. But on the flip side, we have to consider the potential for abuse of power. Like, what happens if his vision clashes with democratic principles?
Right.
What if his focus on efficiency comes at the expense of, transparency and accountability?
That's where the techno-authoritarianism concerns become very real.
Exactly. We could end up in a situation where essential services are controlled by, these private companies with limited oversight, where decisions are being made by algorithms without any human input, and where dissent is silenced through control of information.
It's a sobering thought. And it seems like the line between those two scenarios, like the utopian and the dystopian, is incredibly thin.
It is. And that's why it's so crucial to, to stay informed, to engage in critical thinking, and to really demand transparency from those in power. The future isn't predetermined, and we, as citizens, have a role to play in shaping it.
Okay, so we've laid out some potential scenarios, both, hopeful and concerning. But you mentioned earlier that there might be this counter movement emerging within Silicon Valley itself.
Right.
What gives you reason to believe that this kind of pushback against, concentrated tech power could gain traction?
Well, we're seeing this growing number of, tech professionals, academics, even investors who are starting to, question the direction that the industry is heading in. They're concerned about the ethical implications of, this kind of unchecked technological advancement, the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of just a few, and the potential erosion of, democratic values.
So it's not just like this fringe group of activists, right? There are people within the tech world itself that are starting to sound the alarm.
Yeah, precisely. And they're not just talking about it, they're taking action. We're seeing the emergence of new organizations, new initiatives focused on promoting ethical AI, advocating for data privacy, pushing for greater diversity and inclusion in tech leadership.
It's almost like a David versus Goliath scenario, with these smaller groups challenging these giants of the tech industry. But do they really have a chance at making a difference?
I mean, it's an uphill battle for sure. But I think it's important to remember that, history is full of examples of seemingly small movements that have sparked, really significant change. The key is to raise awareness, build coalitions, and hold those in power accountable.
So it's not just about hoping for the best, it's about actively engaging in the conversation and pushing for this more balanced and ethical approach to technology.
Absolutely. We can't afford to be passive observers. The choices that we make today will have profound implications for the future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come.
This has been incredibly insightful, but I have to admit it's also a bit overwhelming. It feels like we're standing at a crossroads with the potential for both an incredible progress and disastrous consequences.
I understand that feeling. It's a lot to process. But I think that feeling of unease is actually a good sign, It means that we're paying attention, we're asking the right questions, and we're not taking anything for granted.
So where do we go from here? What's our takeaway from all of this?
I think the most important thing is to, remain engaged, to stay informed, and to never stop questioning. We need to be, critical thinkers, challenge assumptions, and demand transparency from those who hold positions of power, whether they're in government or in the tech industry.
It sounds like you're saying that complacency is the enemy, that we can't just sit back and hope for the best.
Exactly. The future is not something that just happens to us. It's something that we actively create through our choices and our actions. And the more informed and engaged we are, the better equipped we'll be to shape that future in a way that, benefits all of humanity.
Well said.
Yeah.
This has been a thought-provoking and, at times, challenging conversation. But I think it's left us with a lot to think about. And maybe that's the most important takeaway of all, to never stop questioning, to never stop learning, and to never stop pushing for a better tomorrow. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I keep coming back to that initial question we asked. Is Elon Musk a visionary leader or a threat to democracy?
Yeah, it's kind of been there throughout our whole conversation,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah.
honestly don't think there's an easy answer, He's a complex figure, doesn't fit neatly into any box.
Yeah, it's almost like he embodies both, the promise and the peril of, this technology-driven age that we're in, right?
Right.
On the one hand, he's, pushing the boundaries of innovation, driving progress in areas like space exploration, sustainable energy. But on the other, his methods, his ambition, they raise some serious questions about, the concentration of power, the future of democracy.
It's a real paradox, isn't it? We're drawn to this bold vision, his ability to, make the impossible possible. But at the same time, we're a little wary of the potential consequences, right? Of that unchecked power, especially in the hands of someone who, kind of operates outside of those traditional norms.
And that's, I think, why this whole conversation is so important. It's not about, demonizing or praising Elon Musk. It's about understanding the complexities of his influence.
Right.
Recognizing both the potential benefits and the potential risks, and, really engaging in a thoughtful discussion about, what kind of future we want to create.
Yeah, we can't be passive bystanders in this, in this tech revolution. We need to be informed, engaged citizens who are actively shaping, where things go.
So if we were to try to, distill a key takeaway from all of this, what would it be? What do you want, our listeners to really walk away thinking about?
I think, the most important message is be vigilant, be informed, and be engaged. Don't just, accept the narratives that are presented to you, whether it's on social media, traditional news, or even from, these charismatic figures like Elon Musk.
It's about, cultivating this healthy skepticism,
Right.
right? That critical thinking mindset
Yeah.
that lets us like question assumptions, evaluate evidence, and, reach our own conclusions.
Exactly. And recognizing that we all have a role to play, right? It's not just up to the tech giants, the politicians, the so-called experts. It's up to all of us.
So what are some like practical steps that our listeners can take to, really be more engaged and informed citizens in this age of, constant technological change?
Well, start by diversifying your sources of information. Don't just rely on one news outlet or one social media platform. Seek out different perspectives, challenge your own biases, engage in like respectful dialogue with people who hold different views.
Break out of those echo chambers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And don't be afraid to speak up, voice your concerns, hold those in power accountable, whether that's writing to your, elected officials, participating in community organizations, or even just having these conversations with your friends and family. Your voice matters.
Yeah, it's easy to feel like overwhelmed or powerless, with all of these huge changes that are happening. But, like collective action can make a difference. Every voice, every action, it helps shape the future.
And remember, the future isn't predetermined. It's being written right now, and we all have, a hand in writing it. So let's choose to write a future where technology serves humanity, where innovation is guided by these ethical principles, and where democracy thrives, even in the face of all this, all this technological change.
That's a future I think we can all get behind.
Mm.
And on that note, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating and at times challenging, exploration of a topic that will definitely continue to shape our world for, many years to come.
It was my pleasure. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for, a better tomorrow.